Hello everybody, welcome back to Access Blockbusters. Welcome to another episode of the Access Blockbusters pod. So great of you guys to be able to join me here today as we're going to be talking about the state of the MCU. Lots to talk about here as we head into the first MCU project, I should say the first MCU movie of the year, as we had Echo in January, I believe. But yeah, I just wanted to take some time to kind of go through the state of the MCU thus far, assess Phase 5 in particular, because I just did an entire series of videos on MCU Phase 4, and if you haven't checked that out on the YouTube channel, please make sure to check out the videos. They're on the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel. I rewatched all of the individual projects, even the TV shows. Took a little bit of time, but I think it was well worth it to just kind of get a fresh perspective on all of them, and made individual videos, ranking videos, and especially I think pertinent to today's episode is the recent couple videos that I made with rewriting Phase 4. And I took some time to really dive in and talk about what I think the storylines should have been, what they could have been building up to, and again, extenuating circumstances notwithstanding, such as the pandemic, such as Bob Chapek and the Disney Plus mandate, because I think now, as we look through what is ahead for the MCU, we're going to, I think, see a little bit more of a cohesive story. We'll talk about the first half of Phase 5, which I think was just, quality of projects aside, just a disaster in terms of the stories, and I think probably the weakest and lowest point of the MCU thus far. But I do have reason to believe that there is hope going forward with the restructuring and with everything that's going on with quality control. I think at this point, Kevin Feige is so aware of how precarious his brand is, relatively speaking, because obviously these films will still, I guess, there are warning signs, right? Like the Marvel's making something like $300 or $200 million. It's just a big warning sign that, you have this brand loyalty, you have people who are going to come out and watch your films and shows, but nothing's guaranteed, right? You got to make good product, and if you don't, then things are going to start to kind of crumble around you. So we'll talk more about that as we get along with this video, or this podcast rather. But guys, first of all, just, quick housekeeping notes, as I've been saying. This is a pre-recorded podcast episode, so unfortunately won't be able to talk about some of the newer things going on. Acolyte, The Boys Season 4. Hopefully we'll be able to talk about those things with you guys as we move along here. We'll definitely be back in time for Deadpool and Wolverine, which I'll be seeing that Friday, July 26th. So really excited about that. And actually, one of these podcast episodes will be sort of a pre-game or sort of a anticipation episode of Deadpool and Wolverine. We'll be talking about what I'm hoping for, what I'm excited about, what I'm nervous about. So that'll be a separate episode. Stay tuned on the channel for that. But yeah, other than that, guys, I'm really excited. Hopefully I'll be able to give you guys a little bit of a state of play kind of podcast episode of the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel and this podcast moving forward. I think I have a general outline of what I want the future to look like, which I'm very excited about. So again, stay tuned for that as well. Okay, guys, so with all that out of the way, make sure to subscribe to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel. If you enjoy the podcast or if you enjoy any of the edited videos that we have on the YouTube channel, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel first and foremost. And if you enjoy the podcast, you can leave a comment down below on the YouTube video, which it will be posted to, but also on Spotify as well. You can leave a rating there, letting me know what you think about the podcast format. And if you have any suggestions and interactions and you want to let me know, just leave a comment in the YouTube channel and I'll be sure to reply to that as well. Okay, guys, so let's, without further ado, take a look at the state of play of the MCU thus far. And like I said, I'm not really going to go through phases 1 through 3, obviously, because that's the Infinity Saga. That's all done and dusted with. I have so many videos on the YouTube channel about Phase 3, so you can check that out if you have time, and I really appreciate that. And again, same thing with Phase 4. I just did an entire series of videos about Phase 4. So if you have the time, please make sure to check out any of the projects that you're interested in revisiting, and then I've done rankings and tier lists and rewrites of Phase 4. But what I wanted to do in today's podcast episode is go through the first half of Phase 5, because I think Phase 5 is divided kind of nicely into 12 projects thus far. I guess that's the way that it's shaken out. Maybe 13. We'll talk about the division of the phases in a second. So we'll talk about the first 6 that have already come out. We'll talk about the next 6 that are yet to come out. And then we'll kind of talk about the rest of Phase 5 and Phase 6, and sort of the projects that have been announced, the projects that are sort of rumored and heavily almost all but confirmed, and some of the projects that are even basically confirmed, but nobody's kind of come out and outright said they're developing the project yet. And what I want to do here is we'll talk a little bit about my thoughts on each individual project, especially for the ones that we've seen before. But more than that, I want to kind of examine what the roadmap looks like heading forward in the MCU. Because I think that if we take a look, right, one of the problems that we had with the MCU going kind of further back is that there was really no roadmap in terms of Phase 4 and Phase 5. Now, Phase 4, I think you can kind of get away with introducing a lot of these new characters and things like that. But Phase 5, I think, really needs to sharpen the focus on characters that we've seen before, which I think it is. And then Phase 6, I think, kind of needs to double down on that. So introducing characters maybe here or there, but also for the most part, really doubling down on the characters that we've seen before so that we're building up to these Avengers films, Avengers 5 and Avengers 6. And actually, I'm looking at this roster here. I'm going to pull an audible. I have my list written out, but I'm going to add one more film or TV show or whatever it's going to be. So let me just add that really quickly. Okay, because I want to discuss some projects that are not confirmed, but I think are, I think essential to the future of this MCU roadmap moving forward. So again, it's really not me talking about my anticipation about these projects, although I'll touch on that briefly, but more of where do I see this roadmap heading forward as we try to, I'm going to be honest, guys, it's getting to the point where I'm just kind of hoping let's get as many really good, solid projects out of the Multiverse Saga as we can, and then head into phases, 7, 8, 9, and hopefully the Mutant Saga. And then we can kind of think about, I think after the X-Men are here, maybe we can kind of think about, or maybe even the X-Men representing kind of soft reboot with the end of the multiverse. We'll see. Because I do like a lot of actors here, like Simu Liu, for example, Iman Vellani, just to name a couple. I hope they don't just reboot the entire MCU after the Multiverse Saga and get rid of them, because I think there's a lot of potential there. But we'll have to see about that as well. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's get into looking back at the projects that have come out before. So we have 6 projects in Phase 5 that have already come out. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Secret Invasion, The Marvels, Loki Season 2, and Echo. Now, just looking at this list, you're going to see that it's a little bit discombobulated in terms of what has been coming out. So again, just taking a quick look at this list, we have an Ant-Man film that was supposed to set up big parts of the multiverse. And we're not really going to, we're not here to talk about Jonathan Majors in any, no pun intended, I guess, major way. But we have Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, setting up the multiverse. We have Loki Season 2, which is kind of continuing the Loki Season 1 arc of setting up the multiverse. And then we have, I guess, 2 projects that should have set one another up in Secret Invasion and the Marvels. They didn't. Secret Invasion had nothing to do with the Marvels. And honestly, I guess more than anything else, we'll kind of dive into this in a second. More than anything else, my frustrations with Secret Invasion were not necessarily the quality of the show. For what it's worth, I know a lot of people really hate the show. I think it was okay at best. Definitely not one of my favorites kind of looking back, but it like all of these Disney Plus shows, it had its moments, right? I think definitely some of the scenes with Fury and his wife, who I can't remember her name. I think it starts with a V. Anyways, or maybe no, that was the Rhodey scroll. Anyways, I'm getting all mixed up. But it's really not the individual decisions made in the project, because let's be honest, a lot of them can be pretty much retconned later on. Like, I think people are freaking out about the whole Rhodey thing. And yes, it may have been the original intention that was the Rhodey from Civil War. I think with the amount of backlash that's come out, I would be stunned in Armor Wars if Kevin Feige kept to that. Because, I mean, yes, he was wearing a hospital gown. You could have said it came anytime after Endgame, honestly. And I think that there's a lot of evidence that you could even point to that backs it up. I know New Rockstars has made a video about that. So it's really not that disappoints me. Not even Gaia, who I think you could easily just write out. She could be on a mission and then, I don't know. Because I think one of the things about Secret Invasion is that it shows how, yes, you have a Super Skrull, right? You had Gravik, right, who was a Super Skrull, but he died because it's not like he's invincible. It's just that he was caught off guard and then Gaia blasted him and he died. So it's not like she's completely invincible, right? So I definitely think if Kevin Feige sees this character as a problem now moving forward, you could totally have her, I don't know, in a Midnight Suns project or in a Thunderbolts project, just, be in combat and then be taken out or something like that. Not that I'm wishing death upon any of these characters or whatever, but I think that people are kind of not overreacting, but just, I think that people are a little more panicked than they need to be about these kinds of things, because I definitely think that Kevin Feige, like, this is the point of the MCU where Kevin Feige didn't really have his control and his quality assurance, and so he wasn't really able to make these kind of story decisions, or at least oversight decisions that he needed to. Now that he has his control, I'm very, very confident that he's looking at all these things that people are saying, kind of taking inventory, taking a step back and saying, okay, wait, so people thought that was crazy. Let's dial this back. Maybe that Bob Chapek wanted a British Avengers show or whatever that they were kind of planning. I'm sure that Kevin Feige no longer is going to be doing that kind of thing. He might, we might get that announcement tomorrow, for all I know. Point being, though, the most disappointing thing about Secret Invasion to me was that it really had zero bearing on the Marvels. And that is a function of the fact that these two projects were in development at the exact same time, worked on by different teams, essentially. I know that the guy who directed Secret Invasion was basically just told, get Nick Fury to space. And look, I mean, while that is fine and all, there was a time in the MCU where different directors would hand off the baton to other directors with a very clear roadmap of what had just happened. So, for example, you go from the Russo brothers in Civil War, who then hand off the baton to John Watts. And there was for Spider-Man Homecoming, and there was a great deal of synergy there, talking about Tom Holland's Spider-Man. So that, I feel like that is tremendously missing as part of the MCU. But anyways, we'll kind of dissect that a little bit more as we go on. But the other two projects, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and Echo, are just kind of there and individualized. So you have these 6 projects that have come out, and it's been strange, right? And the thing about them is that even if none of them connected to one another, and even if Secret Invasion, had really odd and tenuous connections to the Marvels that didn't make sense, the one thing about all of this is that they were really varying in quality. Even for me, easily the best thing about these past 6 projects has been Loki season 2, and even that I'm like, I really liked Loki season 2. I don't really consider it, I don't consider it season 2 necessarily. I think I would consider it just like how they're talking about Daredevil Born Again. It's kind of 9 episodes each, separated into 2 parts, but it seems like it's going to be one continuous story. That this is just really part 2 of, I guess, the Loki story. So 12 episodes put together. Whatever, fine, not a huge deal. But I think that even that show, I was like, yeah, it was good. It wasn't my favorite thing in the world, but I enjoyed it. And so, you have these kind of varying degrees of quality, whereas, like I keep hearkening back to, you had this period of time. If you look back at 2016 to 2019, you just had, like 2017, for example, probably one of the quote unquote weaker years of Marvel in 2017, 2016 to 2019. But you had Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, a film that I think is pretty good. Not the best, but, pretty good. You had Spider-Man Homecoming, which I still think to this day is top 5, if not top 6, 7 MCU projects ever. Love Spider-Man Homecoming. And you had Thor Ragnarok, top 10 easily for me, MCU. And that's not even talking about years like 2019 with Endgame and Captain Marvel and Far From Home, or 2018 with Infinity War, Black Panther, and Ant-Man and the Wasp. Crazy, right? And so I think that in looking at these 6 projects put together, it's really disappointing that this is what happened. Also, the fact that all of these projects, 6 canonical projects in the MCU, because we're not even talking about What If and, all the other things that are coming out on the animation side. These are 6 MCU canon projects that have come out, 6 of them in the span of less than 12 months. And that's crazy to me. So hopefully, and they are going to scale this down. But, just taking a look at Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. What's interesting to me about this project is that everything that we've been told about it in sort of the post-mortem is that they thought they had a big hit on their hands. And I can see why, because honestly, I've only seen it a couple times, maybe once even. I enjoyed it. I enjoy Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I think it's fine. It's totally good. It's serviceable. I might even prefer it a little bit over Ant-Man and the Wasp, just as a film. I think it's fine. It's totally fine. I know a lot of people really hate it, and that is totally fine if you do. Because it's going to hit everybody in a different way. But again, I think that's not the kind of tepid reaction that you want, especially for a film that's supposed to set up the multiverse. And for everything that I enjoy about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, one of the things that I think it did very poorly was set up Kang. And to the point that they reacted so much that even without all the Jonathan Majors firing and controversy, they were looking at getting rid of Kang as the main antagonist just in general. And I think that that's fine, honestly, because they were kind of beholden to introducing Kang in a different way, where he was going to be the big bad throughout all 3 phases. Whereas if you kind of look at Thanos, right? While the Infinity Stones were a big part of phases 1 through 3, Thanos himself really wasn't a presence at all until Infinity War itself, which is incredible, I think, to me. That film alone, like from the first 5 minutes, established him as the big bad. I didn't think he was intimidating at all in Guardians of the Galaxy. I just thought he was a kind of weird purple guy in a chair. So that, it kind of shows you that you don't really need the Kang character if you want him to be the big villain, to just be in every single project and whatever. And again, while I think that Jonathan Majors, everything else aside, gave a very intimidating performance in Quantumania, I think that it was almost immediately mitigated by the fact that he died. That variant died. And also the fact that you had this really silly post-credit scene with the Council of Kings and that whole stadium, which I know is based on the comics and whatever. But it was so silly. The Victor Timely thing, though, was really interesting. I think that they should have just kept that, honestly, alone. So there is that. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, I think we can talk about this project and its placement here. In all honesty, if James Gunn and the whole controversy with him didn't happen, because I believe that happened in 2019, this film would have come out in 2020. It 100% would have come out in 2020. I think that 2020 was the year where Marvel was sort of going to transition slowly from the legacy cast, quote unquote, the legacy cast, into the new era. And so you would have probably had a Black Widow and a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 here, just to kind of represent a passing the torch, right? You want to revisit these characters one more time. The fact that it's here, it's here, doesn't really tie into anything other than maybe a little nod to Thor: Love and Thunder and obviously Endgame with Gamora. But yeah, I mean, I think that, we can look at this film and it just kind of can be a standalone. I almost want to just, in terms of if I ever rewatch the entire MCU, I almost just want to watch Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 right after Far From Home, and maybe even Black Widow, like in the Civil War period, because I feel like that's where those 2 films were just placed in their respective release dates because of extenuating circumstances. So there's that. Then we have Secret Invasion and the Marvels. And again, like I said before, I think a lot of the pitfalls of the canonical mishaps and everything else with Secret Invasion, I think that, yes, there were decisions made that I thought were really dumb, like the Gaia character in general and the Rhodey scroll thing. Not that Rhodey being a scroll wasn't a good idea, just the way they executed it was rather poor. But again, my problem is that, because I think that these things can be retconned and rewritten into future projects in different ways. So I'm not terribly concerned about that, especially because I know that Kevin Feige has control now over these products. But it's more so the fact that, there's just no continuity because, and again, what did we really even learn about Nick Fury other than he has a wife that doesn't show up in the Marvels, which we'll talk about next. The Marvels is a project that is not good, I don't think. It's not particularly well made, and you can talk about all the production problems that, like in terms of rewrites and reshoots and things like that, and cutting out entire sequences. Apparently the dancing and Song and Dance Planet had a whole other section to it and whatever. I watched the film and I thought, my first instinct, because I don't think I had a chance to talk about it on the podcast, is that this is not a well-made movie. That being said, it was entertaining, and if that's the baseline that we're going with now for the MCU, then the MCU has really fallen a long way. So in that sense, yeah, this is kind of a benchmark to say that, whoops, the MCU isn't, in the best place possible. I suppose I should have switched Loki Season 2 and the Marvels, because Loki Season 2 came out a little bit before the Marvels, and I think ended right after the Marvels. But I just wanted to talk about Secret Invasion and the Marvels in tandem together, because, yeah, I don't know, I enjoy, Carol Danvers as a character, although I don't think she's super well-rounded and fleshed out, kind of one-dimensional. I think that the idea that she was the Annihilator was super interesting. Iman Vellani is amazing, as always. Loved her in Miss Marvel, loved her in the Marvels. And I think that Teyonah Parris was pretty good as Photon, I think. Was it Photon? It was Photon, right? Yeah, Photon. But again, just like a completely different Nick Fury. So anyways, all that to say that there was a lot of inconsistency. Also, with the multiverse as well, nobody's giving us, if you gotta go back to my video where I talk about the biggest problems with Phase 4, nobody's giving us a concrete explanation of what the multiverse is, to the point where now Photon creates a rift in the multiverse and ends up in a different universe somehow. And nobody's bothering to explain that other than it just happens. And the problem with that, in terms, speaking of lost synergy, is that you have another show, Loki season 2, that's trying so hard to explain it, and yet none of the other projects, we'll get to Deadpool and Wolverine in just a second, are really adhering to any of it. And so it makes the whole thing feel so discombobulated and disjointed. Speaking of that, because again, I mean, not much to say about Loki season 2 other than I really enjoyed it, and I think that as a baseline to have Loki as the guardian of the multiverse or whatever, great. I love that. Love that for Tom Hiddleston as well, who has spent so much of his time and blood, sweat, and tears into this role, and we just loved him and adored him for so many years. Not that I don't want to see him back. I just thought it was a great way to end the character for now. But then we have a show like Echo, which again had its own production stories. That people talked about, where it was like, are we going to release this because does Marvel believe in this show? And Daredevil's supposed to be in it. He's in it for 5 minutes, and then Kingpin and all these other things. And at the end of the day, like I said with these other shows, and I'm not just saying this because I mean, there's a couple ways that I view these projects and just movies and shows in general. A long time ago, like a couple years ago, I released a video called "You're Watching Movies Wrong." In essence, what I was saying is that I go into any kind of project really with the optimism that I'm going to hope that I like it, because if I don't, it's my own loss, right? It's my own loss if I say I want to hate every project that I see. I want to get as much enjoyment out of anything that I watch as possible. And so, sure, that may put me on the more positive end of these things. Doesn't mean I'm not going to be critical. Like, for example, I genuinely think that, Thor: Love and Thunder is just not a great watch, honestly. And there are really bad elements that, in my opinion, of all these projects, for sure. But again, like a show like Echo, I'm not in the position where I'm like trying to nitpick everything. I'm trying to take in the story and the characters and everything that they're giving me. And in that regard, I think that Echo was fine. It was okay. Certainly not to the quality that we were expecting from Marvel in 2018, 2019, but it was okay. And so, all this disconjointed lack of quality assurance and quality control is what's leading to this feeling of lostness. That's not a word, but feeling lost as we enter this grand scheme of the MCU. Now, luckily, we are just hitting the point now where Kevin Feige got his control back, and you're going to see now as we look forward that the upcoming projects are, I'm really hoping, because there's a chance that these projects are, they're still discombobulated in terms of canon, but at the very least, I think quality control is coming back. So here, what I'm going to be doing is going through the rest of the projects that we know are coming out in Phase 5 and Phase 6 as well. But also talking about maybe not rumors, but things that we've heard that seem reputable, and things that I'm encouraged by, and things that I am encouraged by in terms of they're leading to an overall story. So the first project, we're not going to dwell on this too much because I'm gonna record and post another episode in the coming days about Deadpool and Wolverine and my anticipation for it. So we're not going to talk about it too much. But I mean, one big point of encouragement, obviously aside from quality control, because Ryan Reynolds, I just can't see Ryan Reynolds and his production and his writing and everything putting out a Deadpool film that is anything less than, pun intended, maximum effort, right? And Hugh Jackman coming back as well. I just can't see a world in which this isn't, the worst things that I think people could say about it, and this is me being hyperbolic, because of course people are not going to like the film, because nobody likes every film, right? It's just, it's just not going to happen. But, I can imagine that some of the lower end of the criticism might be something like, this is kind of a bloated mess, but it's fun. And I think the higher end is just going to be, this is the MCU return to form. I hope so. I really hope so. So, but the other thing that I'm encouraged about for Deadpool and Wolverine is the fact that it's in the TVA and it's in the void. So we have at least some of that continuity coming back. And I'm sure that Ryan Reynolds and Deadpool are going to make fun of, the mess that's been the MCU thus far. But again, I'm just really excited about that, because it's showing, okay, we're committing a little bit to the multiverse in a way that I think makes some sense, hopefully. I think that can go a long way. Now, the next show that's coming out is in September, which is Agatha All Along. So that's going to be the third project this year from the MCU. And look, I mean, I was not one of the people who was super interested in this show. And I still am not that interested in Agatha, because I mean, you guys know WandaVision is one of my favorite projects in the MCU ever. That being said, I mean, this is WandaVision, I guess in its conception, was sort of a spin-off of kind of B-list characters. Not saying that, their characterization or performances were B-list, but just they're not the big six Avengers, whatever, right? And so this is almost, in my head, it's like a spin-off of a spin-off. which is a little weird to me. But, and this is where we kind of head into the rumor mill. From all accounts that I've been hearing, online, it seems like the MCU, not the MCU, that Marvel and Kevin Feige are very pleased with this show. And it's also, I believe, being showrun by Jack Schaefer, who did a lot of WandaVision as well. And I think that that's really exciting. So just going back to quality control, because I know that Bob Iger said he canceled a lot of projects kind of quietly. And while maybe, yes, there's this argument of we invested too much into this show and whatever, and so we can't cancel it at this point, I think that the fact that it seems like they have a lot of faith in it is exciting to me. And I'm hoping that while it may not connect too much into the future of the MCU, although who knows, I'm hoping for a really good quality product in the vein of WandaVision, hopefully. Obviously, I'm not expecting everything to be that good, but, just hoping for something that is high in quality. So there is that. Next film up is Captain America Brave New World, coming out next February in 2025. And obviously, this film has gone through a lot of reshoots and rewrites as well. I'm sure we're going to find out in coming years that like a lot of this film has been reworked, maybe even 60-70% of it. But I think that, that was something where Kevin Feige kind of went, we're not happy with this. Let's make this better. And I think they are. And I'm really excited about that. They're doing reshoots. They have been doing reshoots, I believe, with Anthony Mackie and I think Tim Blake Nelson as well, even Harrison Ford maybe. So I'm really excited about that. I think that they're showing a commitment to kind of head back to the roots of the MCU. And again, one of the things that we've heard from the D23 or CinemaCon or whatever, I think CinemaCon footage, was that President Ross is really, is looking to establish the Avengers, and there's going to be this sort of back and forth about that. Again, addressing one of the biggest complaints about Phases 4 and 5 is that where are the Avengers? You can, as long as people are acknowledging that the Avengers aren't there and that's a problem, I think that that's way better than just not talking about it at all. And so I think that's really exciting. Speaking of quality control, a show that, has been confirmed to have just been totally reworked. Like, it was mostly shot, I believe, or even like shot into episode, 5, 6, 7, when Kevin Feige said, no, it's not good enough. It's Daredevil Born Again. And I'm really excited about this. This is going to be, I believe, the first 9 episodes, so you're going to call it part 1 or season 1 or whatever, are going to be releasing in March of 2025, I believe. And I'm just really excited because now it's part of the Netflix continuity. I love Daredevil season 1 through 1, 2, 3. Excited to see Bullseye again. Kingpin obviously at Kingpin levels. Bullseye's back. I said that. Karen and Foggy are back. I just think it's going to be Punisher's back. Super exciting because I think that it's going back to the roots of what the people, meaning the MCU fans really were wanting and were hoping for. So again, really excited about that. Thunderbolts is next. Thunderbolts is, it's a movie that like I mentioned in a previous podcast episode where I went through the 2025 movie release slate, the fact that they're keeping it in May for now, it shows, I think, a lot of confidence in the film. And I think that it's going to be really exciting to see all these characters coming together again, because while this isn't an Avengers film, you're going to have a lot of characters like White Widow, Black Widow, I don't know what the character is called, Yelena coming back, Bucky coming back, Ghost, Taskmaster, Red Guardian, and US Agent as well, with Val as well. So it's just a nice coming together of a bunch of characters that have been introduced thus far, which is what I think we should have seen more of. And I'm hoping that, in these future films, we'll talk about in Phase 6, that we'll see more of that. Now, the one project that kind of sticks out like a sore thumb here is Ironheart, which is the last project, officially, unofficially, in Phase 6. Ironheart is interesting because it kind of screams to me like, hey, this is a project we really did spend too much time on, and we just don't want to cancel it outright, and so we're going to release the project. So honestly, I'm a little scared about this show because it does scream a little bit like Echo to me, where they just spent too much time on it. And while Echo wasn't super integral, in fact, hardly integral into the larger MCU story, I think that Ironheart is going to be the same. But I don't know. Maybe Ironheart is super important into the MCU canon, and they're just trying to rework it now. I believe that what I've heard is that they're re-editing it or something like that. So again, I'm nervous about Ironheart, I will say. But to say that 5 out of the 6 projects I'm somewhat excited about. In fact, 4 of them, Deadpool and Wolverine, Captain America 4, Daredevil Born Again, and Thunderbolts, I'm really excited about, is a really good thing because I think that it shows a direction that they're heading into. And if you kind of look here, right, you have this sort of earthbound story with Daredevil Born Again, the street level story. And even I would include the next tier up of that because, well, I think Thunderbolts and Captain America 4 are street level. I think that they're going to be dealing with a little bit more supernatural with the leader and with Red Hulk and with Sentry and things like that. There have been a lot of rumors and a lot of theories that Captain America Brave New World is going to be dealing with adamantium, which I think is super interesting if it is. Also, hopefully dealing with Tiamat, although I think that's more of just a fan theory than anything else. But I mean, as someone who loves Eternals, I would really hope that we get an exploration of Tiamat and the Eternals and the Celestials again. But yeah, I mean, all of that just so interesting to me. And I think that we're finally kind of coalescing around, okay, we have a Dark Avengers, like team in the Thunderbolts, right? So bringing these loose plot threads together. We have at least the conversation happening about the Avengers in Captain America Brave New World. I almost wish that at the end of that film, we have a kind of sting where it's like the end of Age of Ultron, where you even have this blatant Avengers music playing, and then if you remember, Steve and Natasha are talking to Scarlet Witch and Vision and Rhodey and obviously Sam himself. I almost just totally forgot Sam because I was talking about him. But anyways, yeah, I mean, I almost wish that kind of scene happens, or something like a Shang-Chi post-credit scene where you really are establishing, okay, we're back. And heading into Phase 6, we have a sense of what the threat is looming over this. So, again, I don't even necessarily think that whatever the threat of Avengers 5 is going to be, whether it is Kang or just someone else entirely, maybe even a Doctor Doom, I don't know. Because Avengers 5 is no longer Kang Dynasty, although there are still rumors that Kang is going to be in it. I don't really think it matters, right? I think people are making such a big deal out of, wait, you can't introduce a villain all of a sudden. Yes, you can. Like, Thanos was barely there before Infinity War, and I think people forget that. And so I think whatever they decide to do with Avengers 5, what's more important than the villain, honestly, is the Avengers. I think we've kind of gotten away from that because I think that, they were obsessed for a time with, we need to top Thanos. And I think that, no, what you needed to do was to really reform the Avengers. And I think that that's what's going to get people excited. So that's Phase 5, unofficially, because I think some of these projects that are under the Phase 6 banner right now, and I'm just going off of Wikipedia, honestly, because I think that a show like, we'll talk about the first show in quote-unquote Phase 6, I think could very easily be in Phase 5. These phases don't matter a ton, honestly, the more that I look at it. But anyways, we'll kind of go through the Phase 6 projects and talk about their significance in this story as well. So the first one being Wonder Man, which is in development still. It's being shot. Yahya Abdul-Mateen. The second is going to be in the show as Wonder Man, Simon Williams. I have no idea how this fits into the MCU, but the fact that they have faith enough in it that they're pushing forward, even though they've canceled a bunch of other projects, allegedly, is interesting to me. So yeah, I'm excited about that. Then on July 2025, we have the Fantastic Four. Again, it looks like it's going to be super unique and in an alternate universe with the Fantastic Four in a retro 60s kind of universe. Directed by Matt Shakman, who directed most of the episodes of WandaVision. Really great. We have Blade in November 2025. A little iffy if that's ever going to come out. I know it just lost another director, or at least it was announced that it lost another director, although from what I hear, they're pretty confident in the direction of the script at this point, so we'll see. And then this is just pure speculation on my part, but I think December 2025, we're going to see Spider-Man 4. December 2025 is going to be, 4 years after Spider-Man No Way Home. I think that's a good gap between those two films where you can kind of reset and have a new trilogy, 4 years. And I'm hoping that, as we hear more and more rumors about Spider-Man 4 heading into production, that we'll kind of be moving towards that as well. In 2026, what I'm envisioning, this is just me speculating, we're going to have a Vision show, which will tie in together with another project that I'll just talk about right now, which is the Young Avengers, because I've always had my suspicions that, Vision is going to be the Young Avengers show. I feel like the amount of interest you're going to get out of an audience that is, these are almost all Disney Plus characters, right? You have Kate Bishop, who was only in a Disney Plus show, save for one scene in the Marvels. Spoilers, sorry. You have Iman Vellani, who was in a movie for sure. But look how well that movie did. I mean, it didn't seem like all the Miss Marvel fans translated into box office success. However you feel about the movie itself. And then other characters like, I don't know, Eli Bradley, maybe. there are countless other characters they've introduced that are young Avengers, like Stature as well, and Ant-Man: Lost Quantumania. Again, didn't make a ton of money. So I just think branding this show might be the tricky part. If you brand this though as Vision, White Vision leading the Young Avengers, I think that would be really cool. And that would also solidify to me of why they're making this show at all, because it's just a weird thing to me of like, why are we making a Vision show? But if you have connections here, obviously, Wiccan and Speed can be a part of it as well. That makes a lot more sense to me. So I'm kind of lumping these two projects together. Also in 2026, we'll have the second half of Daredevil Born Again, part 2, season 2, whatever. Just really excited about it. Then we have Armor Wars, which I'm just going to plug into that February 2026 slot. Again, pure speculation. Although Armor Wars to me is interesting because I wonder if it's one of those those movies. It got moved from a show to a movie because I guess they were that excited about it, or they just thought it wasn't viable as a show. It's one of those projects that I wonder if it got axed quietly because it was in development, but now we haven't heard anything about it. So we'll have to see about that. And then we have a couple projects that I'm just speculating about. So we have Shang-Chi 2, which Simulu insists that they're still making. I would love it if they still made that because it's one of my favorite MCU movies. It's amazing. I love Shang-Chi. And then we have Doctor Strange 3, which I don't think anyone's actually officially confirmed this, but if they don't make a Doctor Strange 3, somewhere before Avengers Secret Wars, I would be shocked because, I think that if we think about these characters who are going to take up the mantle of the original, 3 Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, Doctor Strange is clearly one of them, I think. And his importance to the multiverse, I think, can't be understated as well. So there's that. And then I think that, aside from Avengers 5, which comes out in May 2026 for now, and Avengers Secret Wars, which comes out in May 2027 for now, you also have a project that I think has been heavily rumored for a long time, which is a Midnight Suns project. And this is something that I would just be so curious about because you have all these characters that you've set up, right? And I think the name of the game here, if you look at what Phase 6 is, it's really Kevin Feige saying we need to double down on these characters that we've introduced thus far and bring them together in ways that are interesting. So you have your Young Avengers project, whatever that looks like. You have your Avengers, projects, whatever that looks like. I think even Daredevil Born Again, Spider-Man 4 could be synergistic as well. And I think that the one thing that's missing, aside from the Celestials and the Eternals, which I think they will show up, whether or not you liked Eternals or not. I think that the Celestials are just too big of a force that you can't just ignore them in the MCU. They will show up, whether that's in Doctor Strange 3, which would be my guess. They show up in, I don't see them showing up in really any other project. Maybe the Fantastic Four, maybe, with Galactus coming in, but I doubt it. But Midnight Suns is the other project because you've introduced so many new characters in Phase 4 with Moon Knight and Blades coming up, and you got Scarlet Scarab, you have Agatha Harkness, and Black Knight as well, Dane Whitman, that I just think it's imperative that you find a way to tie these characters together so that when they show up in Avengers 5, it's not just a random assortment of, characters you haven't seen since 2021, 2022. So, again, I think that you look at these projects on their own as they wrap up here. It's not like there's something inherently different about them because, yeah, you can kind of look at them and say this is just another hodgepodge of projects that, like Phase 6 has 15 projects so far and probably more. It looks kind of messy, but I think what I see through here, especially with the latter half of Phase 5, is some kind of continuity that was missing in Phase 4. And let's be clear, I don't think they're ever going to be they're going to ever be able to tie up the Multiverse Saga as nicely as they were with the Infinity Saga, where you really, when all those characters showed up in Endgame through the portals, you cared about almost every single one of them. I just don't think that that's possible anymore with the amount of characters you've introduced and how little time you have, relatively speaking, with these projects. But I think that there is a way where Kevin Feige is probably looking at this and saying, we can salvage this for sure. And I think that, that for what it's worth, that's really encouraging as we look through the future of the MCU Phase 5 and Phase 6. So, I think that while, again, if, for example, I don't think Deadpool and Wolverine is gonna flop, but let's just say Agatha All Along is okay, and Captain America 4 is just fine, and Thunderbolts is not really good, then yeah, we're back to where we started. In fact, in a worse place than where we started. But I just think that with all of the quality control and quality assurance that's been going on, that we've heard about, I just don't foresee that, honestly. And I'm really excited for the first time in a while. I think seeing Deadpool and Wolverine, and then hopefully enjoying Agatha, and then hopefully enjoying Cap 4. It's just going to continue to build upon each other. And I think that that's a really good thing for the MCU. So that is sort of the state of the MCU thus far. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments down below, whether you're excited about the direction that they're going in, whether you're nervous still, whether you're just so off the train at this point that it doesn't matter to you. I'd love to hear all of your thoughts in the comments of the YouTube video, or let me know by giving the podcast a rating on Spotify as well. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. This is a podcast, so listening, and I will see you guys in the next one.